Well, this is the U show. And though it might sound like a war zone, this isn't. It's just the city. The night after a very large hurricane. Probably one of the largest the city will ever see. And there are trees blocking walkways and blocking the street. Trees that are ripped up out of the ground by the hurricane. We knew it was going to be a bad one. We didn't know how bad. But I think what we didn't know is, even though the police were out rescuing people, and the fire department and the police were doing a great job of rescuing people, what we didn't know is there were a lot of neighborhoods where there was no help. And neighborhoods where this wasn't a neighborhood that was on an evacuation list. They weren't asked to evacuate, so they stayed put. So what happened? Well, last night, a few trees ripped out. The fire department did come and pick them up. And then 10 minutes later, some more trees were ripped out. And some of them were kind of scary. Some of them were literally picked up out of the concrete, which you'll see in a few minutes. You're watching the U show. Check this out. This tree was planted in dirt and in concrete, and this is what happened. The roots just came out of the ground, out of the concrete, and the tree toppled. There's the concrete. And the tree toppled. The really sad part of this was that nobody was able to reach anybody for help. This tree is actually leaning on wires. If you look up, there's the wires. They're electric wires. We assume they're live electric wires because that's how the people of this neighborhood get their electricity. There are the cables. And there's the tree, which landed on the cables. The tree is, I guess, about to fall eventually. What's holding the tree up is the cables. People in the neighborhood tried to call 311, tried to get help, but nobody came. This tree has been like this all night, and now all day, all morning. At one point, there were people who were foolishly, dangerously very close to the tree. And people called 911 because that was a life-threatening situation. So many times we did hear announced on the radio the night before that people have been killed by trees such as this, and by wires and cables that had fallen. And at the point where people were foolish enough to be around there, to be very close to it, that was dangerous. In this city last night, if you did call 911, sometimes you're on hold for 6, 7, 8 minutes, and you still never reached a human being, a person. But it's not because they weren't working, it's because they were out saving lives. But you never thought that you'd be in the city and call 911 and get a recording and never get an answer. But that's what happened during this hurricane. Here's another tree that's down. Less than a block from that tree. This tree is blocking the whole road. Well, it's blocking half the road. This is a two-way street, and now it's switched to being a two-way street in one lane, because people have to come and take turns going down the street because the tree is blocking the whole street. This was the hurricane. What happened to other people? There are some people who went to shelters, who were in evacuation zones, and they went to shelters. Were you one of those people? We did hear announced at one point during the night that some of the people who went to the shelters, I'm not sure where the shelters was, but there were 1 or 2 shelters that were flooded out. And that might be one of the reasons why people don't want to go. You know, if another hurricane happens, I can see people logically thinking, like, Why go to a shelter? Because it might be flooded out. It might as well be flooded out where you are. But anyway, this is just a walk through the city, seeing what's left. It's like the night after a war zone or a mild war zone. It's a nature war zone. There's another street, another sidewalk that's blocked by limbs that have fallen from trees. This is a neighborhood of trees, and so far no sign of anybody who will help get this tree off the wires. Shall I call them live wires? I don't know if they're wires that bring electricity to your house, and they would be live wires, right? I'm not sure how, how to describe them. But we're hoping that no one else goes near this tree. And the best thing, so what's the best advice? When a hurricane happens, so what's the best advice if you're not in an evacuation zone? Stay indoors. Yep. Stay indoors. That's the best thing you can do, is stay indoors. Make sure you have plenty of batteries. Safe batteries, safe candle, artificial candles, or, electric lights, flashlights in case you have a power outage. Make sure you have plenty of food and water. So what do you do if you have children? What about the babies? What about the children who might be frightened of, all the things that they hear on the news and things that they might see on the news? What about them? How do you make it easier for the children? Well, I'm going to tell you now how you can make it easy for the kids ahead of time. Because you have to know that eventually there might be another storm. Yep, in your life you'll have another storm. Hopefully maybe not as bad as this one. But you will have another storm. And if you have children or grandchildren, you want to keep them safe, but not only you want to keep them safe, but you want to keep them happy. You want to make it as less traumatic for them as possible. So how do you do that? I say you start now and you prepare for your fake camping trip. That's right. Go to a camping store after this hurricane is completely over, when everything's said and done, and when everything is calm. Go to a camping store and prepare for your camping trip. That's right. Prepare for your camping trip. So if you just tuned in, this is the U Show, and it's just a day or so, well actually one day after the eye of the storm hit this neighborhood. And we're telling you what to do for the kids for your next storm, because you will see another storm, hopefully not as bad as this one. So here's what you do. Go to Camping World or REI or any, this is not a commercial for a camping store, but go to any camping store, Bass or, Nello Bean or whatever, and get yourself a tent. That's right. Get yourself a tent. Get yourself a mini tent for the kids, and a big tent, maybe a pop-up tent. Now, once the hurricane begins, or once whatever it is begins, that's the time that you take that tent out and you tell the kids, hey kids, we're going camping. Yep, you're going to have your camping trip. And you set up your tent in the living room or in the bedroom. You take one of the rooms where there's no windows or hardly any windows. Take the safest room, and you set up the tent, and you tell the kids you're going on a camping trip, and you're going to pretend like you're camping. And that's what you do. And that will take a lot of the anxiety out of what will happen. Right now we're looking at downed trees that were fallen over. The fire department did come to this block and take away one of the trees. And they chopped up the limbs and took them away and unblocked the street. And 10 minutes later, another tree came down. It was a hurricane, I'll tell you. It was the storm of the century. Everything looks quiet now, but you have to know that a lot of the trees are still waving. There's a lot of the trees that are still waving. And throughout the city, there are a lot of trees that look like this. if you see a tree like this, for goodness sakes, get away from it. Don't go near it. And if you want to take a picture, like, yeah, don't go near it. Get across the street. Watch yourself and look above while you're taking your picture. Just look up. Are you standing under a tree that might fall? All I'm saying is stay safe. So how do you stay safe in a hurricane? Well, what was proven last night, and probably proven during many storms, is if you're not in an evacuation center, if you're not in an evacuation zone, the best way for you to stay safe is to stay put. That's right. Stay put. Do not go outside. Do not go out to take pictures. I think some of the networks even encourage people, because they go like, send your pictures in. We want to see your pictures. Of course, they tell you to stay safe, but I think that's one of the things that shouldn't happen. People should not be able to send their pictures in while the hurricane or while the storm or while the tornado is still happening. Because people are out there and they're taking pictures when they should be indoors staying safe. This particular tree is tilted down. It's just waiting to fall. And yet, last night there were many people, yes, many people who came by this tree, who saw that it was on the wires, who saw that it's about to fall, and they just stood there in the street, taking pictures, taking close-ups, and that happened during the night. So maybe the best thing to do is for the networks to stop putting the pictures in the newspapers, because it's not working for people. If they're out taking pictures, they're not staying home. You probably can hear the sirens in the background all night. That's what we heard, is we heard sirens, we heard ambulances. All night we heard the fire engines. And hopefully most of the people on the block here stayed safe. This is what would happen if, you know, you were outside. These limbs would just fall, and looks like a little limb, right? No, that's a heavy one. Some of these limbs can weigh 50, 60, 100 pounds. The trees are old. So, stay safe. This is the aftermath of one of the biggest hurricanes that we've had in this city. And this is the U Show. Got questions? Write to us at youctv@live.com. youctv@live.com. In the city after the hurricane.